Alrighty, so good morning. Welcome to the webinar. I hope that everyone has picked their colors and they're ready to chat and interact. My name is Juana Maria and I'm the Business Services Coordinator with Illinois WorkNet, and I just wanted to welcome you to the final webinar. We've been doing this for about 6 months now, so we're very excited to have shared all this information with you. I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick little um, overview of how the webinar works for those of you that are maybe first-time users. If you're listening via the audio, go ahead and mute your computer speakers, because if not, you're going to get a lot of playback. If you are listening via computer speakers only, which we recommend just because it's easier for everyone, then you can go ahead and leave your speakers loud and clear. So for instance, we have Ta who indicated she wants me to speak a little bit louder, so hopefully this is loud enough. Underneath the note, we have a Q&A chat pod. This is the way that you all will be able to communicate with all of us unless you're on the call. When you're on the call, we put you in a queue for the Q&A portion of the webinar. And so we'll add your questions to the end and then ask and facilitate the users and our hosts to be able to ask the questions that they have. Underneath the Q&A chat pod, by the way, this is a really great place for you to also interact with different participants. A lot of people are in a different place in their business planning process. A lot of people have tips that they've been sharing throughout. I indicated you should really, share, introduce yourself, share who you are, what your company does, or what you're interested in. Underneath the chat pod, you have the file share. This is where you can download the webinar materials as well as the different things that we've added on there. You'll have the PowerPoint slides. You'll have a couple of different flyers. What I wanted to mention is that we have a new feature on Illinois WorkNet along with a landing page. But for those of you that are not familiar, there's a whole lot of traffic that we get with the portal, which is how we got a hold of you to get you on about your company and a web link to your website. You do have to be a valid business. We'll promote you on Illinois WorkNet, and especially if you are, for instance, hiring or if you have different resources that you want to offer. And so go ahead and send that to business@illinoisworknet.com. And that information is in the brand yourself flyer in the file share. So if you're interested to do that, go ahead and download that to your computer. So the way you do that is you select the file and then you save it to your computer. You'll get that prompted. Next to the file share, you have the polling pods. This is a good way for us to gauge, one, what kind of services you're interested in, what kind of things we should talk about, and then the industries that you represent, because this is really relevant, especially with the type of key sectors we focus on in Illinois. So it's good to kind of have an understanding of where you all are coming from. Now, with the business services speaking with Denise and trying to get more exposure to small businesses and to individuals about the small business development centers and the different services that we offer even through WIA with business service representatives. We wanted to make sure that we included information and resources specifically to those starting a business. And so we started a series, and to give you an idea of how many people we've serviced, we've had about 300 or so participants register for each webinar. And so the first one was starting a webinar, starting a business. The second one was licensing and registration basics. The third one was up recently, which is the lending initiative through the state of Illinois. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen over and hand it over to Denise.
Thank you, Juana, and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being on the webinar this morning. What we're going to talk about today are resources. So just as Juana was speaking about, this has been a series that has been going on for about 6 months now, where we started with a business plan. We talked about how to set up your business legal entity and get all your licenses and registrations in place, how to finance a startup, and how to create a marketing plan. And this kind of pulls it together. So if you're kind of feeling overwhelmed with how do I for capital as a startup company, you just don't have unlimited cash to do everything you want all at once. So it's a great way to help you get the things that you need without having to spend a lot of money. And it also is a great source of information and connection to help you have what you need so you can be successful. Different types of resources available. We'll look at centers that offer that, and then networking, advocacy, technology, financial resources, and then there's a few additional ones at the end. And so resources, really, a lot of the resources that are available for small businesses and people who are looking to start a small business are around business literacy. And I say that because a lot of people that I know I see and some other people see in our small business development centers are, people who are really great at, roasting coffee, or they're really great at picking out the trendy clothes that are going to sell in their retail store. They're really great at designing character toys, but they might not necessarily know accounting practices. You might not necessarily know collection terms. You might not know sales and marketing tips. And so a lot of the resources understand general business practices. And so a lot of the resources are tied around that. And so available to people who are looking to start a business, or maybe you just started it maybe last year, or certainly you can be in business for many years and still use these resources. But the focus of this webinar is for people starting a business. I've listed quite a few here. You have Illinois Small Business Development Centers. That is a network of resources available throughout the entire state of give an assessment of how you're doing, like what is your next step, where are you at, what do you need to do, and kind of walk you through that process. And so you can to help you understand business so that your business can be successful. There's also more focused on those high growth, seeking angel. The next thread list, that would be a great resource for you. I should mention that there are also international trade centers, and there are procurement technical assistance centers, or PTACs for short, what we call them. And those are centers that help businesses with export assistance. So if you wanted to do international trade, there's also, and the procurement technical assistance centers help companies contract with the government. I just mentioned them now because I didn't list them on the resource centers, because typically you need to be in business at least for a while to kind of get established before you kind of start to venture out into those fields. But I did want to mention And there's
And
also, yes, go ahead.
sorry, and just to jump in, you can find those centers through the Find a Location Near You. So we had the previous webinar last month was on procurement, so doing business with government, and a lot of those are listed there with some tips from one of their, for instance, from the DuPage Center. So if you're really interested and you've like Denise said, kind of established yourself, you can go ahead and check out that resource as well because it'll have that listed in there.
Absolutely. So great point. So chambers of commerce are a little bit different because they're more of a membership organization, but they can be a great resource to um, Chicago. At least you have the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest business trade organization, but then you have all of your neighborhood ones. There's, West Central Chamber of Commerce. There's Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce. I mean, they're all over, and so that can be another resource of information to help you grow your business. SCORE stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. They are located in the same offices as the SBA downtown in Chicago, and they also provide free individual counseling, advising young entrepreneurs or people young in their business to be successful in their venture. And how they're slightly different is that the people who volunteer and work at SCORE are insurance agent for business liability or someone who's been an accountant. So you're meeting with someone who's been a professional in that particular area, so you can have a more focused appointment. So if you know you specifically need help with your accounting, then you could meet with SCORE and you would be matched up with somebody who's been in accounting essentially their entire professional career. The Women's Business Development Center, which is also located downtown in Chicago, their main focus is helping women business owners, women to start businesses. They also do the certifications for a women business enterprise. They also help with government contracting for women businesses. And they have a really great child care business program. So if you're looking to start and ratios and all that goes into operating that type of business. And then many colleges and universities will not only have maybe a mix of these centers. They might have an entrepreneurship center. They might have an Illinois Small Business Development Center. But they also have satellite programs. You don't have to go and get an MBA. You don't have to go back and get another undergraduate degree. You can go to colleges and universities and do an online program or a continuing education type of program to educate yourself in different aspects of business. And so in talking about networking, really, I just look at networking as more as a way to meet other business owners, leads, and try to gain clients. That would be like your LATIP, which is probably the most famous one, where you would meet once a month with a select set of business owners. You're all in different fields, and you share clients and you share referrals. Alumni associations can be really good with that, where you are meeting with other people who've been to your school and you make your business connections through there. There are a number of nonprofit organizations that facilitate networking, such as ICNC. We tend to do that on a regular basis so that business owners are constantly meeting other business owners to help promote their services. When you look at trade organizations, those tend to be more based off of industry knowledge, so they're going to be specific to a particular industry, like the National Restaurant Association. So those can be more beneficial in the sense of what's important in your industry and what's going to make it easier for you to do business within that industry. And so as a new business owner, it can be important to join one or two of these types of networking groups, whether it's a trade organization or just a pure networking leads generation type group to help promote your business, to meet other people, to try to gain clients, and to try to grow your presence within your industry. As far as advocacy, that can also be another resource maybe that doesn't immediately come to mind, but once you get into starting a business, you might run into maybe some rules and regulations that you weren't aware of before you started a business. You know, a lot of these can be around maybe human resources and what's required if you're going to be hiring employees. Other ones can be around, you know, putting a sign outside your building. Maybe another one is getting the pothole fixed in front of your be really helpful and can be a resource to you. You know, the local ones would be your aldermen. You have your state and federal elected officials. They can, you know, be of help at times and depending on what you need, but there are also organizations like the National Federation of Independent Business Owners and the National Association for the Self-Employed. They're there advocating and lobbying for um, the interests of small businesses in front of Congress to try to make laws and regulations less burdensome for those people who are truly small businesses. So, you know, what's required for a large corporation that has 30,000 employees is not being asked of a small employer who only has 2 employees. And your chambers of commerce are also really good at making sure that your business interests are being presented to the people who need to hear it. And then looking at technology, I think it's kind of a given these days that you have to have a website to have any type of legitimate presence in the marketplace. But maybe you're not ready to hire a web designer and have a $5,000 or $10,000 fully integrated website. There are plenty of resources to help you get a website for free or for very little money, maybe $10, $15 a month. Um, a lot of our clients use WordPress. We have some that use Weebly. We've used Homestead in the past, and these are templates that you don't have to know code. They're very professional looking, and you basically, if you know how to use Word or PowerPoint and type into a text box, you can create a very professional looking website that basically will get you that presence out there on the internet so people can find you. We're also seeing you know, more and more being available to help people with their search engine optimization and with their organic search. There's lots of analytical tools. I mean, if you just use Google Analytics, that can help you quite a bit. And all of these things are free or they're very little money. QR codes are becoming more popular, and those are also free. And as you can see, these are live links in here. So if you want to go in and access any of these links for more information, you can get them live through the PowerPoint. And then we can see, yeah.
Can I just jump in for 1 second? Something I wanted to mention, because this is new on LinkedIn, is that you can actually start a business page on LinkedIn now. And this is a great way where you can define your services, even like your Facebook business page. These are all, you know, stepping stones in creating that momentum and that traffic to drive it to your website or to drive it to wherever you may take it from there. But something new on LinkedIn is the business pages and the way that you can, I mean, they've always had businesses, but now you can actually define your services and products and so forth.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And it's such a great tool now having social media for small businesses because it really kind of levels the playing field. You don't have to have the $1 million ad campaigns to have some type of brand presence. You can use these free tools to grow a presence online and really target your network, and it can just easily spread. It's just made it so much easier for small businesses to market to their customers by having these tools, and they're free. It's awesome. So cloud computing, that's becoming more and more popular these days. It's also a great advantage. Hundreds or thousands of dollars on having a great IT technology platform. So it's a great way to kind of put that all together. So I put Salesforce on there, for example, if you were looking to do some type of customer relationship management software. There are other ones available. I just put that one on there because it's probably the most well-known. But it's a great way to integrate your communications and kind of track your clients and keep track of all of your customer information. It's really easy to use. It's very inexpensive. And then you also have SAP by Design. I mean, SAP has huge, robust IT programs that larger technology platforms to make sure everything is integrated between their manufacturing and their accounting department and their sales department and their management, executive management department. SAP by Design is a cloud computing software program available online that's very inexpensive that can really integrate all of your processes together. So it really gives you that advantage that you wouldn't need thousands of dollars to run your business very efficiently and effectively. And there's all kinds of other softwares that are available that are, offered at discount, usually at resource centers like a small business development center or a chamber of commerce would have access to these types of discounts. The money at least up front, and then as you grow in your business and as you grow in your revenues and your profits, and you have the money to spend to upgrade your website and have a more robust site or have a more robust software, but things are available for you at a low cost as a new startup company. And then when we talk about financing, it's always interesting because it's really, really difficult to get a loan as a small business because banks are primarily looking to get paid back, so they want to see a history of sales to show that you can have steady sales and that you have steady expenses and that your expenses are less than your sales so that you have enough money to pay back that loan with the regular payments every month. And you can't do that as a small business just starting up because you don't have usually what you'll find when you're a startup business looking for financing is there are alternatives out there. And so these are some of the resources you can use to get some money to help fund your startup business if a bank says no. And one of them would be an SBA loan. So if the bank does offer loans to a startup company, typically they'll do it as an SBA loan. And what that means is you would apply for a loan at the bank. The bank would say, okay, because you're a startup company, we normally wouldn't approve this with our underwriting guidelines, but what we'll do is we'll approve this as an SBA guaranteed loan. And so the bank then sells the loan to the SBA, that's the Small Business Administration, and if in default if you should happen to default on the loan, the SBA will pay the bank back up to 75%. There's different percentages, but that's the basic one. And so it makes it less risky on the bank to lend to you as a small business with no history of sales. So you could get an SBA loan at a bank. There are also micro lenders and alternative lenders that are available in There's also the Duman Micro Center that will do loans up to $15,000. There's a number of credit unions that are known as Certified Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs. Um, that means they've done some work with the U.S. Treasury Department and they have money to lend to small businesses. They can also be another resource for financing as a startup company. And then there are a number of tax incentives and there are some grants, although they're a little bit limited. The grants are usually one, limited in their funding, meaning you can have a grant program, but if the money runs out, you have to wait until there's more money available. This facade rebate, it's up to $10,000 to help do work on the outside of your business. So maybe your front doorway, the windows, some signage. Uh, it goes to a lottery because more people apply than there is money available, and you have to wait until the next time that grant program is refunded before you can apply again. And typically the application process is open for 1 to 3 months. And so that's why the grants can be a little tricky because they're usually very targeted towards maybe like beautifying a building or a lot or structural improvements to a building so that it increases the property value. It could be around hiring employees. I know there's a program right now on on-the-job training where it's essentially a grant to help you hire people. And so my recommendation with looking for grants for a business is to use a resource center so that they can qualify you, one on your eligibility and one on if there's money available in the programs, because that's kind of their job. It's their job to help you find these resources, but they can tell you which ones are available and which ones aren't. So with that, there are a couple other resources that we like to use, especially here at our center, and one of them would be legal services. We do see a number of people who are looking for intellectual property protection, or maybe they have some contractual issues that they would like resolved. Maybe they're looking for some advice on their business formation and what entity they should choose based off of the type of activity their business is going to be engaged in. And so the ones that we have found that we like a lot are the Law Project. The Law Project is a nonprofit organization. They have an online application. It's $25. You would identify your business, and that law firm will do the work for you for free. So for example, if you were having an issue with employment law, they would match you up with a leading employment law firm in Chicago, and they would contract with you for free to do that work. So it's a really great program. We've had quite a bit of success with that, or our businesses that we've worked with have had success with that. Another good resource would be the Chicago's Legal Cafe, which is located in the West Loop. They also help contract out legal services for you at a discount rate. And then Carples is a hotline where you can call in and speak with a lawyer. They'll pretty much handle any type of business law except litigation in court. And they're also, I believe, like a $20 fee. So it's a really inexpensive way to kind of get your questions answered. It kind of puts you on the right track with any type of legal issues or questions you might be having. And then incubators can be a great resource for growing your business. There's an incubator here at our center called the Fulton Carroll Center, and we're an industrial manufacturing incubator. With information, so maybe someone who's a professional in accounting, or they might have someone who's a lawyer on staff, or they'll have people who can help you with hiring people or marketing and sales. There's all kinds of resources available in-house. Sometimes they have below market rent. I know a lot of them do, we do. And so it's a great way to, one, get what you need, such as space, to run your business at a discounted price, but it's also a great resource because you can get all the information you need for growing your business and have that network of other entrepreneurs around you so you can kind of be in that environment and grow from it. And then don't forget about bartering. Bartering can be a great way to get what you need without having to pay a lot of money. Just swapping services. Maybe you roast coffee, and so you can trade your coffee out with an IT person who's going to help you with your website. And so you get your website done, he gets his coffee, and you're all happy. So you can think about that if you have services to kind of get what you need without having to pay a lot. So wrapping that up, that's pretty much my portion of it. I know we've got some more that we're going to discuss in this call, and then we'll do questions.
So right now I'm going to go ahead and get Stan on the phone. Stan, can you hear us? You there?
Yes, I can.
Yay. This is a serious victory right now. Uh, thank you so much for being on the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and I'll get rid of Denise's slide and bump you up so you can get started and explaining the new lending initiative with the state. Let me get you from the start.
To this webinar.
Absolutely.
My contact information is there on the screen. I assume that people will be able to have a copy of this at some later date.
They actually have it in their reminder email, as well as it's in the file share, and
Okay,
it will be on the website.
As many of you know, the state, through the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, has had business finance programs in the past. Unfortunately, over the last few years, the funding for those programs has been swept into the General Revenue Fund to help pay other bills. And things were looking pretty bleak. However, we now have probably the brightest future for DCEO-supported business financing for small businesses, thanks to something called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. And so I'd like to talk to you about that. Do I do the next slide, or how does that work? Hello? Initiative program. The basic program requirements applied to us by the U.S. Treasury, where we are now, and then I'm going to describe some of our new products, which in some cases are enhancements of our old products, and some products are totally new. Next, please. In September of 2010, President Obama signed the Small Business Jobs Act. That act was encompassed about $30 billion out of the 780 some odd billion dollars that was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Of that $30 billion, the act was divided into four. Title I deals with all of these many changes that you've probably learned about from the SBA, especially involving the SBA 504 program. Greater amounts, the ability to do refinancing, the waiving of some fees until, of course, they ran out of money for that. Title II involved tax and accounting benefits for small businesses. Title IV involved investments by the U.S. Treasury into community banks, especially in preferred shares, to encourage those banks to make loans to small businesses. However, we're dealing with Title III, the State Small Business Credit Initiative. What Congress did was they took $1.5 billion and they divided it up among the states based on the population of that state. the unemployment experience that that state encountered during 2008 and 2009. And so they took the about 5 or 6 times more money than we had in 1985 that we had used all the way until 2007 when our funds started getting swept. So basically, $78 million will keep this program going for as far as we can see into the future. It's a very large amount of money. However, we're not getting all $78 million at one time. It's being divided into three, each about $26 million. Now, we've already received our first allocation of $26 million. It is now in the state treasury in something called a federal trust fund. That means that this money can only be used for this program. It can't be put into the general fund, can't be used to pay any businesses. It can't be used to pay any other debts that the state has. It can only be used for these small business events. However, there's a problem. Before we get the second 26 million, we have to use up 80% of the first 26 million, and we don't get the third 26 million until we use up the second 26 million. What that means is that we have 21 months to get out about $47 million out into the market, which means we are very anxious to start doing deals as quickly as possible. Okay? If we do not request that third $26 million before July 29th, 2013, there's a high probability that we'll lose it. If we lose it, the governor, or some of the governor's staff has advised me that the new state law outlawing the death penalty does not apply to me. So we really need to get this money.
That's good news for you, Stan, huh?
I hope so. I need the people who are on this webinar to help us use this money as quickly as possible. Can we go to the next slide, please? The Treasury, of course, has, as I mentioned, given us a 2-year limit. However, 2.5 months of that limit has already been used up getting prepared for this program. We also have to show that we're leveraging a property loan, and then the company goes and gets equipment and or revolving lines of credit from other banks that we're not even involved with, or the same bank, but we're not involved in those particular deals. We can count those as assets that we've helped catalyze or help create. We have until March 31st of 2017 to show that we've achieved 10 to 1. And we think we're going to be able to do that, especially since the loans that we make means that the loans that we make will be amortized, will be paid back over this next 5.5, 6 years, and we can lend that money out again. So that's how we're going to achieve the 10 to 1. When we talk about small business, we're talking about actually pretty large small businesses. The average size of the borrowers is 500 employees. The maximum under the Capital Access Program is 500 employees. However, under our other programs, although the average is 500 employees, the maximum could be as high as 750 employees. Okay? In terms of the investment size, the size of the loans that we can work on under the Capital Access Program, the average has to be $5 million or less. The maximum is $5 million or less. However, under all of our other programs, although the average is $5 million or less, we can actually help a deal as much as $20 million. Where do we stand at this time? Well, I think I've already touched on that. We've received our money. We're now finalizing our documents. We're making some minor changes to some of our programs even as we speak. But we are basically online now. We're ready to start rolling. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go too deeply into some of these programs. Why don't you go into the next slide? One of our programs is called the Capital Access Program. This is a program that mostly we will be presenting to banks, because this is for a bank that makes a lot of small business loans. In essence, they make a small business loan, they charge a fee to their borrower. That fee goes into a reserve account in their bank. We then match those fees, and as those loans are made, more fees go from the borrower into the reserve account. More fees come from us. Uh, that means that the bank that's making these loans does not necessarily have to use up as much of its own capital in order to set up reserve for these small business loans, but in essence uh, already has some reserves set up from these fees. In the event that one of those pay off, the fees that are paid by the borrower and the fees that are paid by the state stay in the reserve. So actually the reserve can be built up fairly high to really protect the bank on its entire portfolio of small business loans. Here, the bank just has to enroll these particular loans. We don't go through the credit analysis steps that we do on some of our other programs. So this is very convenient for banks. Next slide, please. The participation loan program is our main program. Again, I'm not going to go through in detail. That's for next week's webinars. We have a standard participation loan program, the basic program. We have a special program for minority, women, disabled, and veteran-owned businesses, at least 51% owned and controlled by any one of those particular classes. By the way, just because a business is $1,000, probably the standard program or one of the other programs would be better. We have a program for revolving lines of credit. In the past, we had a facility that was not very popular with the banks because it required too much loan administration. But the fact of the matter is now we've simplified the program, made it more attractive. The next line there, convertible subordinated debenture issuance, we're actually going to take that out of the participation loan program and put it into our venture capital program. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But like I said, we're making changes as we speak. And then there's SBA supported activity. These are not only going to be attractive to borrowers, it's also going to be very attractive to banks in terms of the risk mitigation that we provide the bank in making small business loans. Next slide, please. Basically, on our standard program, we will participate up to 25% of the entire project. That's the loan that's being made. Any equity that's coming in from the borrower. We don't require any equity, but if the bank requires equity or if the borrower wants to put in equity in order to reduce their debt load, that's the kind of equity we're talking about. And then it's any other money that's coming in. Subordinated loans from shareholders, grant money, loans from other institutions that we're not participating with. Generally, we call that the 3 Fs. The friends, the family, and the fools. Anybody putting money into the business, that's what we mean by other money. Anyway, we'll go 25% of all that, or 50% of the loan itself, whichever is less, up to a maximum of $2 million per project. But that $2 million depends on job creation and now, they don't have to be at risk in the sense that the company is about to fire their workers, although that is one of the factors. It could be the retention of jobs that could go to another state if the company doesn't get the support it needs in order to stay in the state of Illinois. So those jobs are at risk of leaving the state of Illinois, and that's what we're going to try to retain. Our maximum tenor is 10 years. That doesn't mean you can't do a real estate deal for 20, 25-year amortization. It just means that at the end of 10 years, the loan will balloon. Has to come back because we need that money to come back so that we can lend it to other parties. So we will participate in a loan that involves an amortization schedule greater than 10 years. However, after 10 years, we need our money back. Our interest rates are below market. What does that mean? Well, the basic, uh, by the way, I see one of the questions here. Yes, the jobs do have to be W-2. They can't be contractors. Um, let's see now. Where was I? Oh, when we talk about the interest rate being below market, we're talking about being um, approximately 2.5% below what the bank is charging. So if the bank is charging 6%, we're going to be somewhere between 3.5% and 4% on our portion. However, between the bank and the borrower, we're not even mentioned in either one. However, the borrower will discover that the interest rate is lower than what the bank said they were going to charge. And the reason for that is that they take, let's say the bank is doing 3/4 of the deal and their interest rate is 6, and we're doing 1/4 of the deal and our rate is 4. The promissory note will say 5.5%. That's called the blending and weighting of the interest rate. So in essence, we're basically invisible to the borrower once the bank goes ahead with the loan. The money that we are involved in lending cannot be used for passive real estate. What we mean by that is that the borrower has to occupy at least 51% of the business premises being financed. You can't buy a 500,000 square foot warehouse, use 100,000 square feet, and then rent out the rest. However, you can buy a 500,000 square foot warehouse, use 251,000 square feet, and rent out the rest from the first day on. However, now, one of the big changes is that refinancing of the bank's of one lender's loans by another bank is permitted. So if you're stuck with a bank that refuses to lend you any more money, or they don't want to refinance your loan, we can go to another bank. That other bank can refinance that loan with our help. And again, we can go up to 25% of the project or 50% of the loan, whichever is less, up to $2 million. So you can see how that might help you get away from a bank that isn't being cooperative to a bank that is willing to work with you. Next slide, please. This is that Minority Women and Disabled Business program. I will go into more detail later, but in essence, although the dollar amount is less, it's only $200,000 compared to the $2 million on the standard program, we go up to 40% of the project or 50% of the loan, whichever is less. And our tenor is only 7 years. However, so this is a way of entry into the world of being an entrepreneur. This is a way of helping people get involved in franchises and other businesses where there's a large upfront franchise fee in order to get involved in the market. However, for minority women and disabled, you'll notice that we can also go up to $65,000 per full-time equivalent being hired. So this makes it pretty easy for us to go up to 40% of the entire project. Just as an example, if a minority, women, disabled, or veteran-owned business needs $500,000, we could provide $200,000 of it, and under this participation loan program, we buy a portion of the loan and fully subordinate our portion to the bank. Now, what does the full subordination mean? Well, in the event of a liquidation, and I mention liquidation because that's the way bankers talk, they were abused as children and frankly are trying to get back at the world by being mean. But in the event of a liquidation, the bank liquidates the company and applies the proceeds first to their expenses, then to their interest at their interest rate, and then to their principal before the state gets absolutely anything on its investment. In essence, the state gets no money until the bank is completely paid off. What that does is if there's a small business that is looking for a loan and the bank says, well, you know, you don't have enough equity or you don't have enough collateral, what this means is that the bank can now look at the participation from the state and say, okay, you've substituted the state's involvement for the equity or the collateral that you're missing. And so we'll go ahead and do the deal. Next slide, please. This is just our participation in revolving lines of credit. Basically, we provide funds to the bank. The bank pays us a very small interest rate on those funds. They then use those as part of their financing of revolving lines of credit for borrower. I'll go into more detail the next time in the full presentation. On the next slide, and yet if the borrower can't or doesn't want to pay principal and interest, for instance, they need the money for development of a prototype or proof of concept in the very early stages of product production, we will, under a pre-existing agreement, be able to convert our loan from one that requires the repayment of principal and interest to one that allows us to take equity in the company and receive royalties or some other form of payment. Next slide, please. This is a new product. Before we didn't do this because it reduced the exposure of the bank too much. We felt that we were taking too much risk from them and making it just too attractive for them to do. However, as you know, we want to get this money out into the market. Therefore, what we're doing here is we're actually assisting banks in doing loans under an SBA 7A guarantee. We can only do 20% of the loan that's involved, but let me show you an example. Next slide, please. In example one, we're not involved. So there's $1 million loan, $600,000 is achieved during liquidation. The bank is stuck with $400,000, and that's their portion. The SBA provides them with $300,000 reimbursement under the guarantee, which is 75% of the $400,000 shortfall. That means that the bank has to write off $100,000. The second example is us splitting the deal with the bank 80-20. The bank takes $800,000, we take $200,000. We actually give them the money for that. We send them a check. Same situation, $1 million loan, $600,000 in proceeds derived during the construction, during the liquidation. There's a $400,000 shortfall just as above. However, the bank's portion of that is only $200,000. So the bank gets 75% of that, which is $150,000. The loss to the bank is only $50,000. You see how that attracts the banks because their risk is so greatly reduced? Next slide, please. This is actually an activity that we've been doing for several years. I assume that many of you on the webinar are aware of the SBA 504 program. The typical structure is the bank puts up 50% of the real estate or high-value capital equipment. The SBA comes up with somewhere between 30 and 40%, depending on certain certain guidelines. For instance, if it's a startup business or if it's a special purpose building or special purpose equipment, they'll subtract 5% for each of those. So somewhere between 30 and 40%. The typical portion from the SBA is 40%. And then the borrower is supposed to put up a 10% equity or 10 to 20% equity. Next slide, please. This will give you an example of a typical SBA 504 transaction without the Department of Commerce being involved. As you can see, this is a $3 million project, $2 million for a building, and $1 million for a UTL. And I bet you nobody on the webinar knows what a UTL is because I invented it. It's called an ugly term loan. In banking parlance, ugly collateral is collateral that's not going to get very much in the way of an auction value if they have to take it over. That would be furniture and fixtures and computers and telephones and inventory. It would be work in progress. It would be other things that just don't sell well in an auction, and the bank recovers very little from it. Okay? So let's see now. This is a $3 million project, and the bank on the building portion would put up $1 million, the SBA $800,000. The borrower would have to put up $200,000 in equity. And on the ugly term loan, the bank would be required to put up the entire $1 million. Now let's see what happens when we work with the bank. Next slide, please. When we work with the bank, again, we look at this as a $3 million. Okay, now let's take a look at the building. Well, it's a $2 million building still. Price didn't go up or down. That's amazing in this market. The bank puts up $1 million. The SBA again puts up $800,000. We're willing to put up the $200,000 that used to be the equity that the borrower would put up. The SBA has certain guidelines where we can lend the equity, or the borrower can borrow the equity, and we meet those particular requirements. Also, we have an intercreditor agreement with the SBA. It's a very special thing. Under that, even though we're part of the bank's note, which would now be $1,200,000, we would be subordinated to the SBA. However, with that other money, remember we said $750,000, we could take, after we take out the $200,000 that we put into the building, there's still $550,000 that we could put into the deal, and that would be the, we would be able to take, in essence, 1/2 of the ugly term loan, greatly reducing the bank's risk on that. So that's something that has been very attractive in the past. Next slide, please. I'm going to have to rush because I see we got to get to questions and answers. This is a new program that has been successful in Michigan, and this is for both banks and borrowers. Let's say there's $1 million deal, and the bank is willing to do the $1 million deal, but they feel that the borrower has insufficient collateral. What we do is we put collateral into the bank. We put 20% of that loan into an account at that bank, and although it reduces over the years as the loan is paid down, we still maintain at least 20%, usually more, of the outstandings on that particular loan as it's being paid down. What that means is that in the event of a liquidation of the company, the bank can actually use our cash collateral to reduce their losses. So we are providing collateral to the bank in support of the borrower's request for a loan. Next slide, please. Site address in the red on the top. In there you will find our website on Advantage Illinois. A number of the programs are listed in the left-hand column. And there's a special section there that says for lenders, where the lenders can actually go and get the documentation they need to actually document their deals. And I'll stop now because I understand we have to do questions.
Thank you so much, Dan. I also wanted to let everyone know this is the webinar that's coming up next week. I strongly advise you to go ahead and get registered. It's going to fill up really fast. And you can go ahead and do that from the link that I included in the chat pod, or you can go to the lending page and click on resources. There's a link up there that says get registered for the webinar. And so it includes a lot of the information on the DCO side, and it's just organized based on their fact sheet. So something for you to use. This is also where the archived webinar is going to be. So you all know where to reach out to be able to view it again or to get the information that you need. So with that said, I'm going to switch it over and go ahead and fill out these pods while we're asking questions. Let us know how informative this webinar has been. And and we'll get started.
Okay, the questions are going to be in that left-hand column.
Correct, yeah, in the
Okay.
chat pods.
I have to try to spread it out because it's not.
Any questions? I see people typing, so.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and move this over to the left a little bit because we want to have, people won't have access to the polling pods then.
Oh, sorry.
Green companies, and if so, for what industries?
That would generally. Oh, go. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I was going to say, I know at UIC, there's the Institute for Entrepreneurial Studies, and they have a Illinois Small Business Development Center and a entrepreneurship center there, and they have a focus around sustainable green businesses, and there are some grant money available to help businesses in that area. So you do have to be a green business. That would be my recommendation, is to check with them. There's also the Clean Energy Trust. I believe there's some, there's a couple of different programs with them. I'm not 100% familiar with them because a lot of my companies don't qualify. But I would check out the Clean Energy Trust, and then I would also check out UIC's Institute for Entrepreneurial Studies.
There's also some grants available through the Energy Recycling Group of the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I don't know if all that money has already been claimed, but that certainly would be something to check out. Furthermore, in our venture capital product that I skipped over, and I will go into greater detail next time, one of the businesses that we're targeting, one of the areas that we're targeting is green company development. So most of these green companies are early stage. Our venture capital activity will include everything from actual investments in common equity, as well as in preferred shares and in convertible subordinated debentures, depending on the aspects of the particular borrower. And the obviously equity is different than a loan. You are giving up a certain portion of the company. However, you're not paying interest in principal. So.
I actually have a quick question for the participants, and you can go ahead and do it with a raise of hand with your little guy up at the top. How many of you, are in the process of either writing your business plan or developing your strategy, and you feel like you got the fire underneath you now because you heard about all this money? So go ahead and raise your hand if. Money is coming out to be able to start working on that plan. And in order to do so, and this is part of the announcement that went out, is go ahead and reach out to your small business development centers. You had your business service teams on the webinar that introduced themselves. Use these people to get it together so that you can be lending ready, right? And so you can, if you have a bank in mind, you call Stan and you say, hey, I went to my bank. They have no idea what I was talking about. Can you talk to them? They'll educate your local lenders so that you can qualify or at least have a chance to qualify for this loan. So if you want to maybe talk about that a little bit, Stan?
Right. Typically what we do is if you have a bank and you have what you feel is a reasonable proposal, you have a business plan, you're ready to go to a bank, and the bank says, well, we need some more equity, or we need better collateral, or we need a lien on your personal residence, and your spouse will kill you if you actually extend it. What we will do is go with you to the bank. We will sit on your side of the table. We'll present our program, since I'm assuming that your loan officer, your bank officer, doesn't know the program. We will explain our program. Uh, you will then present your project. I will then come around and, again, explain how our program will help the bank do your project. We are on your side of the table. We are part of your team. However, unfortunately, as soon as the bank says, yes, we're going to do it, then we become on the other side of the team because now we're creditors. We basically let the bank run the entire relationship with you. We don't interfere in their relationship. But when you're looking for that loan, we are on your team. We travel with you. We go with you to the bank. But you got to be ready to speak to the bank.
Got it. Any other questions?
We can't participate with crowd lending, mainly because the U.S. Treasury requires that our lenders be regulated by one of the federal or state agencies that regulates financial institutions. So no, we can't we can't work with crowd lending.
The other thing, so that's a crowd lending is kind of like the micro lending. I'm going to move
Well,
this up.
a group of individuals, typically it's individuals, get together and provide a loan to a company. A company advertises a need, and under these crowd lending groups, people pledge, $5,000, $10,000, and when the company has enough money, then the loan is made. But the lenders in that case, I mean, who's going to manage that loan? Who's going to service the loan? Who's going to adhere to the guidelines that the financial institutions have to meet? So basically, Treasury has said, no, we can't be involved in crowd lending.
Any other questions? I'm going to wait to see if people are chatting. Looks like everybody is go. We got one more. Oh, a few people. Oh, well, you're very welcome.
You're
So
welcome.
that one's good. Thank you very much for your participation. Once again, go ahead and get registered for the upcoming webinar. If you're really scared now, hopefully you're scared